Hey guys, take a second this morning to talk about my opinion on the Alien Enemies Act invocation by the president. It's been a lot of back and forth about the presidential powers, but when you research the law itself and the SCOTUS rulings on it, what you find is that the president has likely acted within his authority in invoking the act. If you read it, the media has been saying that the pretext for invoking it is a declaration of war by the Congress, which is one of three pretexts. If you read the war section of it, or the invocation section of it, it declares that a war needs to be declared, 1. 2, a invasion has to have occurred, or 3, a predatory incursion. So there's 3 separate reasons, and they are all separated by or, which means they are distinct. They're not the same. It doesn't require a declaration of war. It's not a wartime power in the sense that it's only for a declared war. It is a wartime power in the sense that it is beyond what you typically see, protected by the constitutional protections of due process. So if you recall the beginning of Trump's term, at the onset he came and declared an invasion at the southern border. So if you read further down in the law, it says that the president needs to do these things by invocation and a proclamation of these events. So he proclaimed an invasion at the southern border. We have active military down there. The United States Marine Corps is down there. The Army is down there. The National Guard is down there. We have military assets at the southern border. It is an active invasion by declaration. Furthermore, the Attorney General, through the Department of Justice, and the President, by proclamation, has declared a number of these foreign gangs as international terrorist organizations. So they are essentially functioning as military combatants. What you have to understand about the entire intention of the Alien Enemies Act is not that if a uniformed soldier crosses your border, you can remove them immediately. The entire point is that we can be invaded in a covert manner. That's why the law, if you read it, specifically says that those that are of the age of 14 and older, which is military age by that standard of 1798 when the law was written, if they're 14 and over, if they're from that country, they can be removed, because we don't know if they are or are not military combatants. That's the entire point of the law. So we look at this, we can see that we have people here that are, in the case of the Trinidad people, they are considered members of a terrorist organization because there's a lot of intel that says they are working with the Maduro regime and infiltrating our country. At the same time, with the open border we had under the Biden administration, we had about 40,000 military-aged Chinese men enter the country illegally through the southern border. What are their intentions? We don't know. There's no formal hostilities with that country, but we don't know. And that's the entire point of the act, is that, this is why we had internment of the Japanese in World War II, is that we didn't know if there were covert Japanese in the country. Was it right? I would say no. A lot of innocent people were interned, but the reality is that you don't know when you're in war, and that's why the Congress in 1798 gave the president this broad power. So pundits will say there are a number of reasons that this isn't lawful, but what we have to do is look at the legal precedent. If you go to the 1948 case at the Supreme Court, what we find is that the Supreme Court ruled on this exact law. And I'll summarize some things. I don't have anything to read from to tell you the exact wording, but I'll give you a basic rundown of it. You can go check this for yourself. What the Supreme Court said is that this law was drafted in 1798, and it was drafted as broadly as possible by the Congress intentionally, because they were giving the president exceptional powers outside of what would be the normal powers of the presidency. They understood this. The Supreme Court goes on to hear arguments on this case, and in this opinion, what they say is that the fifth Congress, the seventh of 1798, knew exactly what they were doing in giving this broad power to the president, and that the power could be corrupted. It is a dangerous power, but that is no reason to control it and withhold it from the president because he needs it. They also go on to say that this power has no formal process for judicial review. It's not subject to judicial review. It is not a power that needs to be proven in court. They go on to say, they even talk about after the cessation of World War I in 1920, that the Attorney General went to Congress and said, we need to pass a law so that we can lawfully deport people that we believe may be sympathetic to our enemies from World War I. The Congress goes on to say the SCOTUS goes on to say that the Attorney General was wrong in asking for that because they didn't need to, that the power was already vested in the president, that there was no need to go ask for judicial review or for due process for these people because the power already was vested there. And at the end, they go on to quote the first court that reviewed this case, and he says that in effect, that this is all reliant on the American people. He says that, he quotes justice and says, if we elect fools into our government, we'll have foolish presidents. We'll have foolish laws. If we elect people into the government that are not of good moral and sound character, we will have abuse of powers. And we know that, but we would trust the American people to elect people that serve their best interests. So they completely destroyed the idea of judicial review of this law, that it is an exempt power of the president, vested completely in the executive branch, that it has no judicial oversight. They rule on this very specifically. They address literally every concern that you'll hear in the media today about this power. The only answer is, if you do not like it, it has to go back to the Congress. It has to have legislation passed that will change this law. Because as the law currently stands, the power lies in the executive branch with no judicial review, and the president can invoke it anytime he wants. And the only oversight for this law is that the American people elect good quality character. And you can argue you don't like Donald Trump and he's a bad character. Make that argument, that's fine. But he's still duly elected by the United States people, and this power is vested in him. Joe Biden could have used this power. Barack Obama, George W. Bush, any of them could have used this power. It is vested in the president. He followed every letter of the law. He made a proclamation, designated these people as terrorists. He proclaimed there was an invasion. We have military assets on the border. He followed the law. The law gives him this power. If you don't like it, call your congressperson and tell them to change the law. But the law is what the law is. The judge that placed the injunction on here has no power to do that under the law. This is a delay tactic. It won't work. The SCOTUS is going to look at the former ruling and toss this out once it gets there. The whole point is to slow it down and to slow walk the Trump administration agenda, which, you know, if you want to abuse the powers vested in the government of this country to stop the will of the people, that's fine. I mean, you're welcome to do that. It's a broad system that can be abused, but you're not going to win the people over by doing that. If you look time and again, you'll see that people are broadly behind this. So, you know, I'm for a system of laws and upholding those laws. If Trump had overstepped his constitutional boundaries here, I'd be glad to say he did. I disagree with him on several things, but the reality is, in this case, he has the broad power to do this. He has no judicial oversight. If it's abused, it's abused. That's just the fact of the law, is that it can be abused. They knew that when they drafted it. It was affirmed by the Supreme Court, and we're just going to have to live with it. At some point, we're going to have to either say this is a power we're comfortable with having in the presidency, or this is a power we have to restrain, and that's going to have to happen through legislation. Anyway, that's my rambling about that, because I keep seeing all these pundits talk about it, and they try to paint a narrative, and that's fine. You know, I get that people, you know, Trump is viewed as a divisive president, but the law is what the law is, and we can't have double standards depending on whether we like the person or not. We have to apply the law and follow it. So Thanks for listening to me ramble. I'm going to click this guy off, and you guys have a great day.